Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Also those who with AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Namachar Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem Siddhho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopida Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Gang Jamona Tulasi Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Samavetta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Go, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatadesha Tadane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasdi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, verse 26. Tram Dvastavarsham Sukhamara Pada Karodu Bhav Amsa Kapola Gatram Char Ayatakshanut Unnasatu Yakarna Subrananam Akambu Sujata Kantam. Him Dvi Ashta 16 Varsham years. Sukumara delicate. Pada legs. Kara hands. Uru thighs. Bahu arms. Angsa shoulders. Kapola forehead. Agatram body. Charu beautiful. Ayata broad. Aksha eyes. Unnasa high nose. Tulya similar. Karna ears. Subru nice eyebrows. Ananam face. Kambu conch shell. Sujata nicely built. Kantam neck. Translation: This son of Vyasadeva was only 16 years old. His legs, hands, thighs, arms, shoulders, forehead, and the other parts of his body were all delicately formed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful, like a conch shell. Purport: a respectable personality is described beginning with the legs, and this honored system is observed here with Sukadeva Goswami. He was only 16 years of age. A person is honored for his achievements and not for advanced age. A person can be older by experience and not by age. Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who was herein described as the son of Vyasa, was by his knowledge more experienced than all the sages present there, although he was only 16 years old. Translation: the son of Vyasadeva was only 16 years old. His legs, hands, thighs, arms, shoulders, forehead, and other parts of his body were all delicately formed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful like a conch shell. So here we have a description of Sukadeva Goswami, son of Vedavyas. And the description mentions different parts of his body, which were all very beautifully formed. We'll find in relation to descriptions of person, there's a Shastra actually called the Samudrika Shastra, which describes the auspicious nature of different parts of your body. What your fingers and your hands should look like, how long your arms should be, how long your legs should be, etc. And that's considered to be auspicious if you have those qualities. We see in the case of Lord Chaitanya when he was born, then I believe they began to quote the qualities which made him a Mahapurusha. So he had certain qualities. His arms were long down to his knees, for instance. Like this is one of the qualities of a great personality. And they have different other characteristics also. So all these things are mentioned in particular scriptures. So this applies to persons in this world, which have material bodies. It also applies to the Supreme Lord, or Vishnu, or Krishna. So when Vishnu and Krishna are described, they also conform to these conventions of auspicious bodily parts. So the arms are generally long down to the knees. Lord Chaitanya's arms are like this, and Vishnu's arms are like this as well. And all the other body parts also fit into that category. So in this way, there is a definition of beauty, which is auspicious. And this applies to the Supreme Lord, and it applies to great personalities in this material world, even if they have material bodies. So that is why they sometimes mention the different qualities of the person. In this case, Sukadeva Goswami, as was mentioned in the previous verse, it was very difficult to tell who he was, because the normal conventions, he ignored those normal conventions of dress and manners and fitting into a certain varna or a certain ashram, etc. He didn't have any of that. It says it was alaksha. So it's alaksha linga. There was no way of knowing what he actually was, because he didn't have any. He didn't have a danda to make him a sannyasi. He wasn't wearing cloth like a grihasta. He didn't have a certain haircut or whatever. His hair was all shaggy, like this. In that sense, of course, he had no clothes at all. So it was very difficult to tell. And then he didn't act in any particular way which could define him as being of a certain varna or a caste or whatever. Of course, who knows, maybe he had dirt all over his body so you couldn't even see his complexion. And his hair was all matted, etc. So, in that way, difficult to tell just what his qualities were, and therefore the women and children were following him and making fun of him because they couldn't really tell what his real nature was. But in any case, he did have these physical characteristics which would indicate that he was actually a great personality. So that's why these things are mentioned here, to show that actually, even physically speaking, by seeing him, if you had knowledge, then you would understand, he's a great person. But the women and children weren't knowledgeable of that, so therefore they just found him as some crazy man running around without clothes on, and maybe he's dirty or whatever, so they thought he was a madman or something like that. in spite of the fact that great personalities may disguise themselves, as we see in the case of Jad Bharat or Rishabhadev, or the sage who acted like a python and was just lying on the ground and didn't care about food or anything. Everybody disregarded him. So these people generally hide their exalted nature. But if you are an intelligent person and you know the qualities, even by just seeing the body, one could distinguish his greatness just from that. So this, of course, applies particularly to the spiritual world, because everything is beautiful there, everything is auspicious, so everyone has all auspicious qualities. So we'll find huge descriptions of Krishna and every feature of his body, from his toenail to his ear, or whatever like that. Each thing is described in detail, his eye and his eyebrow and his teeth and his lips and his cheeks and his forehead and his neck and his shoulders and his arms, forearms, and his fingers and his hands, etc. His thighs, his knees, his shanks, his toes, his the soles of his feet, his heels, etc. All these things are described and glorified. And even for Radharani, the same thing. Everything is glorified because they reach the perfection in all this. In one place in Nectar of Devotion, it says that real beauty means that all of the limbs of the body are arranged in a perfect form, in a perfect way. That there are everything, the eyes and the ears, they're all in their proper places and the proper sizes. And then that makes proper beauty. So that is naturally there in the spiritual world. One of the qualities of Bhagavan, the 6 qualities, is Shri. And Shri can indicate beauty as well as wealth. So therefore that Supreme Lord in any form, whether he is Krishna or Rama or Nrsimhadev or Vishnu, that person is most beautiful. All of the bodily parts are perfect. And this will even apply to someone like Varaha, who's a pig. And we don't think a pig is beautiful under normal circumstances, but maybe horses or dogs or cats, maybe we'll say are beautiful. We don't usually say a pig is beautiful. But Varaha is most beautiful because he's Supreme Lord. And somehow he has a particular type of beauty in him, in spite of the fact that it's quite different from the normal beauty that we see. So in any case, in the spiritual world, the forms are beautiful. This applies to the Supreme Lord. It also applies to the devotees there. So many of the devotees even will look like the Supreme Lord. All of the people in Vaikuntha, the male forms look like Vishnu, and they all have 4 arms, and it's very difficult to tell them apart from Vishnu. When Gopakumar first went to Vaikuntha and they told him to wait outside the gates, then he saw people coming by, and some of them looked like Vishnu, but they were just regular devotees. And then he thought they were the Supreme Lord. He was offering respects, and they said, "Don't do this." And then when he went in the gates, and where the gatekeepers there, and then he thought, "Oh, this is Vishnu," and he started offering his respects, and they said, "Don't do this." So very difficult for a normal person to even tell the devotee from the Lord in many cases. And the same with Krishna. Uddhava was very much like Krishna. And when the gopis saw Uddhava come, then they thought, "Oh, Krishna's arrived," because they look very much like Krishna, same complexion, same eyes, everything was the same. So the devotees also have a very similar nature as Krishna. So in this way, in the spiritual world, everything is very, very beautiful. In the material world, one gets beauty with the material body by karma. So if you've got good karma, then you've got a beautiful body. Then you've got a very body that conforms more or less to all these wonderful characteristics. Yeah? You do good punyas, then you get that type of body where all the limbs are in their proper position, etc. And a person who has a bad karma, then they would have something out of place. The nose is too big, or the eyes are too big, or the ears are too small, or something like this. Some irregularity is there, and then it's not considered so good. So that's a bad karma, so to speak. But in relation to, so then if we look at the surface, we can say that person has some good karma if they have the bodily features in proper order. It's not the only thing. Wealth is another thing, and family is another thing. These are all karmas, but one of them is just physical appearance is a good karma also. So you've done some punya in your past to get that. And then some of it's not like that. They did some bad thing, and therefore they're a little different. But that's all material, and we cannot apply that to devotees. So therefore, in the Nectar of Instructions there, you cannot judge the devotee by their appearance. And if they're lame or whatever, or they're blind, or their complexion is blackish or whatever, or disfigured, or they got some disease, or maybe they don't have any teeth or whatever, different physical ailments or whatever are there. You should not think that they're lesser devotees because of that. We cannot judge a devotee based on their physical appearance at all, or their physical condition. So that is because the Atma within the body, that's what we are giving respect to. And the Jiva or the Atma, if they've developed as a Vaishnava, they may have reached the topmost level. And they're completely different from the body that they got due to some karma. So we can't put the two things together and say because he's got these defects, therefore the soul also is advanced or whatever. So we cannot judge by the external characteristics in terms of devotees in this material world. At the same time, sometimes the great devotees, when they are born, then they will also reflect these perfect conditions. So they will have very attractive bodies, as the case here with Sukadeva Goswami. He had a wonderful body like this, with all auspicious characteristics. But it may not be so in some cases. There may be problems with those devotees in terms of the body. So we cannot judge based on bodily alone. Rather, we judge based upon the advancement. So that is what Prabhupada says here in the purport also. Generally, we judge a person of their wisdom by their age. So if they're older, then we say, okay, they must be better. So then some people want to get an older guru with white hair because he should have more advancement in terms of spiritual knowledge and whatever realization. And if he's young, then maybe he's not so advanced. And generally it is so. A person who's more mature, more aged, has more experience, and it's more knowledge, more realization. But it's not always true. We have old fools also. And we also have young people who are very realized, as the case here with Sukadeva Goswami. He says 16 years old. He had not even become adult. He was more or less Yovana. This is Yovana, age 16 years old. Just before the adult stage. The very elder sages who were hundreds of years old, they were honoring him. And even incarnations of the Lord like Narada Muni and Veda Vyas, they were honoring him also. But he was only 16 years old, very young in appearance, but they were honoring him. And so we can't think that simply because they're young, they don't have spiritual advancement. Yeah, they had. He had spiritual advancement, and therefore the greatest sages were offering respects to him. So that just goes to point out how, I think Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions in Harinam Chintamani that we can't judge the spiritual advancement of a person or respect a person as a guru based upon age or wealth or beauty, or varna, or ashrama, or power, or followers. So we can't say that a person's more advanced because they have more disciples, or because they're older, or because they look nice, or because, what else, all these different things. Varna, he comes from a Brahmin family, therefore he's better, or he's a sannyasi, therefore he's better than a grihasta, or whatever. We can't judge based on varna, ashrama, age, wealth, followers, etc. That is not how we have to judge who was the better guru or who was the more advanced person. So how do we do it? So the thing is, the real qualification of guru is one who knows Krishna. And of course that's a very broad category, but so the more closer you are to Krishna, that's your advancement. how to judge that is a little more difficult. So we can't do that externally. So it's only by association that we can begin to appreciate that. So in any case, we have to look for the real qualities of the person, which we may not be able to appreciate just by looking at them. So only after associating with them for some time, then we can understand their nature. This is an example here of the age aspect was not the consideration. He was very young, but he had to be given the most respect because they understood that he had the most knowledge and the most realization. And to confirm that, then he also had the physical features that supported that in this case. But in other cases, it won't be like that. So we won't be able to recognize by the physical features at all. So therefore, we'll have to be a little more introspective about it. The great sages will be able to appreciate another great person. Those persons who are less advanced may not be able to appreciate a more advanced person. And many people will not even understand that there's a Bhav Bhakta or Prem Bhakta present. They won't understand that. They won't be able to recognize them at all. It would require a more advanced person to understand another advanced person. So that's another problem we have. And thus, in Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami warns that you cannot expect the Bhav Bhakta or the Prem Bhakta to conform to our conventions and what we expect him to be. He may act in a completely different way, and if you look at these external actions or whatever, you may not be able to understand his real nature as an advanced devotee, because he does not act in the normal way. So he says, therefore you have to be very careful. Therefore the advanced devotees we have to be very careful of, and another advanced devotee will be able to recognize such persons. So we have cases like in our recent history, someone like Bamsi Das Babaji. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, gave great reverence to him. But other people, if they look at him, they say, who is this person? He is so irregular. He's not like a normal, person. He doesn't act normally. He's smoking a pipe or something, and he bathes his deity in the river like this, and this pulls him out, and that's the Abhishek, put him in the river, pull him out like this, offer some eggplants or something, raw eggplant or meal or whatever. Same with Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. They didn't act like normal persons. So on a regular level, you may not appreciate them. But advanced devotees can understand their intense level of attraction to Krishna. So therefore, we have to be very, very careful about criticizing those persons and all. So very fortunately, here are all those people, they recognize the nature of Sukadeva Goswami. They understood his nature, in spite of the fact that women and children didn't. The great sages, because they were advanced, they understood. But we see that the women and children, they didn't understand. Or we say any materialist would not be able to understand the position of Sukadeva Goswami. So therefore we have to be very, very careful also in identifying people completely, and you have to be very, very not pass judgment on them by initial impressions or whatever. Okay, any question there?
We heard that there's different pastimes or appearances of Sukadeva Goswami, something similar to Narada Muni, I guess. So Narada is considered Shakraveshavatar. So what category could we understand Sukadeva Goswami?
Well, it's not really mentioned. So we would assume he's just a jiva. He's not a Shaktavaisha avatar or anything like that. So he's a jiva, but very advanced. It doesn't say he's a Nityasiddha even, but I think Parikshit and Yudhisthira we consider are Nityasiddhas, and Bhishmadev also, but doesn't say about Sukadev. So maybe he's a Sadhaka Siddha or whatever, Sadhana Siddha jiva. He was, of course, on the level of Brahman at one level, so then he became a devotee of the Lord. So in that sense, we can say maybe, and it wasn't, or doesn't say it was an arrangement of the Lord, so then we can assume that he advanced from Jnana to Bhakti and then got perfection.
So I'm wondering, in Vaikuntha, there's a lot of people, a lot of devotees who have similar characteristics. Almost all the residents have similar bodies.
Four-armed forms like Vishnu. Yeah.
But in Dwarka, only Uddhava has that. Is there others also?
Well, they're all, we can say they all look beautiful, but they don't exactly look like Krishna. So Uddhava was very much like Krishna. Others are like partially. So we can say even in Vrindavan, the cowherd boys, many of them, they're slightly different, the complexions are different, but they're all beautiful and they're somewhat like Krishna, so it's not completely different either. So they'll have like a similar beauty of sorts, but they all have their own individual characteristics as well. So in Dwarka we have all the Yadus, and they're somewhat individual, but they all have spiritual bodies and all very beautiful also. Of course in Vaikuntha they all have 4 arms. So in that sense, they're all similar, but I suppose even there they'll have individual characteristics because each jiva is individual as well. But superficially, you may not recognize them, but I suppose among themselves they could recognize each other. And then, of course, we have female forms there also. So it's not all male, there's female forms there also.
So is Uddhava in a special position then in Dwarka? Is Uddhava in a special position?
Oh yeah. Of all the Yadus, he is considered to be the number 1. Okay? And 1 because he is always with Krishna. Krishna goes to the assembly, then he comes back, and then nobody sees him. But Uddhava follows him into the inner chambers of his palace, and he's with him at all times. So he's a constant associate of Krishna in Dwarka. But more than that, he was sent by Krishna to deliver the message to the gopis in Vrindavan. So that put him in an even more special position, that he got an understanding of the Madhurya Rasa between Krishna and the gopis, which others, the Yadus, didn't really have. And he understood the intensity of the love of the people of Vrindavan, and he was able to pacify Nanda and Yasoda and the cowherds and the gopis and the cowherds, etc., because he appreciated their mood. So he, more than any other Yadu, could appreciate the quality of love in Vrindavan. So that's why Krishna sent him. So therefore he's a little bit of a transitional figure. He can go both ways. He can sit in Dwarka or he can sit in Vrindavan. So in Gopal Champu, Jiva Goswami describes that when Krishna returned to Vrindavan permanently, after he killed Dandabhakra, one form went back to Vrindavan and stayed there with everybody there, whatever. Uddhava was allowed to come also because he had that understanding and appreciation. Of course, they had other forms in Dwarka later on, but he also stayed there with Krishna in Vrindavan. So he's very, very special among all the different Yadus, highest of the Yadus.
Mark, you mentioned something about Srila Prabhupada. Were there any of his qualities not Srila Prabhupada's form?
The physical qualities? Oh, I don't know. Maybe somebody could just figure out if you start measuring the length of his fingers or something.
And does the body of one who's making this advancement, will it change? Is there any mention of that?
Will they change the body? Oh, as they advance. Well, it is possible. It is somewhat possible. Of course, generally, from the traditional point of view, if you're born with your karmas, including your body and your family you're born in, then you cannot change that. That's one karma that doesn't change throughout your life. Once you got your genetic body, you're stuck with that your whole life. However, in Bhagavatam it says that one who chants the holy name once purely or meditates on the lotus feet of the Lord purely, instantaneously all of his karmas are gone, including his birth karmas. So therefore, one who is born as a dog eater is no longer a dog eater by birth. He does better than a Brahmana. So therefore, that's the basis of us getting a Brahman thread, basically, because once we're a Vaishnava, then we're qualified to do whatever a Brahmana can do, because our karma of being born in a Mlecha family or whatever is finished. Not that we are a Brahmana, but we've actually surpassed that, but at least we've destroyed the karma. So in that sense, at least the birth is gone. Whether the physical features go or not, that's another debatable question. But anything is possible by the will of the Lord after one becomes a devotee.
Thank you, Maharaj. One class I heard a couple of years ago, I think it was Dr. Purushottam Maharaj was giving at the Marple. I'm very fuzzy on the details, so I'm hoping you might have heard of this. Excuse me, and you could illuminate me, but basically he was telling a story about Lord Shiva was reciting Bhagavatam. I don't know, and I don't know where the source is. I only know about Purushottam Maharaj was saying. And the Lord Shiva was reciting Bhagavatam to his wife. And he was reciting with his eyes closed. Are you familiar with this story?
Is this the one that you told yesterday? And then his wife was falling asleep?
Oh, I wasn't here.
And then the parrot was there, and he was...
This was yesterday's class, was it?
Where did you know where scripture comes from?
Sorry, which part was that?
The parrot was with Shiva and Parvati and Shiva... Ananda Vrindavan Champu? I don't know. I don't remember it there, but...
I'll listen to yesterday's class. It will be on YouTube.
Yeah.
You go to our website and I'll get the details. Thank you.
Thank you for the class. Maharaj, you mentioned about that someone who's young of age could be more advanced than someone who's in terms of age or number of years in the movement. At the same time, we observe that those who may be advanced at a younger age, they still follow the external etiquette. Like, for example, I listen sometimes to Amarendra Prabhu and you can see his humility. So he's saying that he's speaking because of the blessings of the devotees. At the same time, by hearing him, you can tell that he's quite progressed in his spiritual practice. So I was, if you could talk about the importance of also observing the external etiquette, even like someone who's older but not practicing, we stand up and we offer them a seat.
So we have two levels of respect and etiquette. One is the normal level, or the material level, so to speak, or the varnashramic level, or whatever, or external level, and the other is the internal, based on the internal values, of which ultimately the internal is more important for us because that's the spiritual level, and that's what we have to respect. But even when we do so, generally we also follow the externals as well. As I mentioned previously, though we're involved in bhakti, we do have some external things we have to take care of, like we do have a body, we do have a family, we live in a society, so there are some rules for that also. We can't just disregard those rules. So the devotees in general follow the rules of the Varnashram system in that regard. As far as external respect, and that simultaneously then they're following the internal rules, and that will apply as long as that devotee is within that system. And when they're out of the system, as in the case of Sukadeva Goswami or a Babaji or a Paramahamsa person, then they no longer give the same respect to those rules anymore. They're beyond it in one sense. But as long as one is participating in that system, then you have to follow those rules. So we have rules of respect. So that will be respect for elders, respect for parents and grandparents, respect for people who are more power and wealth. Automatically, wealthy people, political people, kings, whatever, we have to give some respect to them as part of the social thing like that. Those things are, and age and everything like that. Varna, again. So we'll find often in the Bhagavatam itself, Krishna himself is glorifying the Brahmanas and respecting the Brahmanas, or in the story of Jai and Vijay and the Kumaras, therefore Vishnu there is respecting Sanat Kumar and his brothers because they're Brahmanas, and we can't, disobey their curse when they curse Jai and Vijay. I can't really neglect that. I have to honor their. So there is, honor for the Varnas as well, and then we have the ashramas. So the grihasthas have to give respect to all of the other ashramas. So in this way we have all sorts of different types of respect that are due within that varnashram system, and generally the devotees also follow that. But then, as I say, ultimately then we also have to think of the spiritual level as well, and take care of that. And the varna aspect's a little exterior, and the spiritual advancement's the other level. So when we're talking about spiritual advancement and getting spiritual knowledge, then we have to go to the person who's got the most knowledge, not the person who's got the highest varna or the highest ashram or the highest age.
One question.
In terms of a very exalted devotee, let's say Uttamadikari, it's understood that he sees everyone as a devotee of Krishna.
Yeah.
However, if he sees everyone as a devotee of Krishna, or Jesus, then how can the Uttamadikari preach?
Well, then generally they don't preach. It's generally the Madhyamadikaris who are the preachers, because they make distinctions. And the Uttamadikari, he says everybody's a devotee, so Hare Krishna. Everything is perfect in this world, and he's kind of in a trance with participating in the pastimes of the Lord. So therefore, it's very difficult for him to go down to a lower level. However, we'll find in Bhakti Sandarbha there, Jiva Goswami says, yes, that's the general tendency, but we have exceptional cases where the Uttamadikari will also preach. So he says Narada Muni, for instance. He's on the highest level. Of course, he's a Shaktavesh avatar also, but he also preaches. And we have others as well who come down to the level of preaching as well. So they may do that, but the common case is that the one who's got to that level, they're so absorbed in the pastimes of the Lord that they forget about the material world. Yeah? So therefore the main preachers are in the Madhyam category. Those are the main preachers. Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna.
HH Bhanu Swami ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.